they screwed this thing up from the get-go, though. I mean, this organization is horrible. And they hire a offensive-minded head coach with a offensive-minded former player as the quarterback coach a year ago, and then they fire him mid-season, right? And the owner goes on a rampage, and they go out and hire a quarterback guru and Dave Canales, and then you have a situation after a poor performance once again on Sunday. The head coach having his back and saying, he's our quarterback, and then everything changes on Monday. Well, what happened is I'm sure he tested the waters of the locker room from the other coaches on the staff, maybe even heard down from some ownership and said, hey, we got to change the culture. We got to get some winning going on here. And, I think the best thing for us would be to do that with a veteran quarterback who's seen it all, been through it all, and can handle all that stuff. So, that's this organization has done nothing to try to help and develop a player that has so much expectation on him. And so, I lay this at the feet of the organization completely. Bryce Young didn't choose to get drafted first overall. He had no say in it at all. He wanted to just play football. He was very, very good in college, and he wanted to play football for a living. And so that's where he's at right now. And unfortunately, I don't know what this means. The team's horrible. They're not very competitive. They're not very talented. I think this is a perfect fit for a quarterback who has been through a lot in Andy Dalton, who can kind of right the ship and maybe give him a chance at winning a football game here this season.
Ryan, then when I listened to the head coach talk after the decision was made, I thought they might say, look, he's still our guy. It's obviously there's a lot happening right now, and we feel like he'd be best served to just sit back and chill for a week or two. It didn't sound like that was the plan. Is it over for Bryce Young in Carolina? I mean, is there any coming back from this after, again, pulling the plug 2 weeks in?
For him, I hope so. I hope he's out of there at the end of this year. I hope he gets on with a franchise that really gives him an opportunity to develop and learn and not be in such chaos. We're seeing it happen more often where a quarterback's drafted very high, is then let go, usually in the past, because of the crash and burn or the expectations. There really is no answer for you other than to be a backup the rest of your career. But what we've seen with Geno Smith recently, and then Baker Mayfield, his fourth team to get a $100 million extension, that just doesn't happen. So maybe we're shifting in that direction a little bit, and people are understanding that every single player that's drafted, like all 5 or 6 of the quarterbacks that were drafted in the first round this year, are all capable of being starters in this league. They're so good. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been drafted that way. But it just all depends on where you go, right, the system you're in, the coaches you have, how long the turnover is on that. If you're on your third head coach by the time you take, a snap to start your second season, like that's a real problem. And that's exactly what's happened to Bryce Young. Exactly what happened to me. They fired my head coach in the 6th game, and I had my third head coach and my third offensive system by the time the season 2 started. So I can relate with it pretty significantly. I hope for the best for Bryce, and that is to not be in Charlotte anymore, not be in Carolina. Hopefully that happens sooner rather than later.
Yeah, Ryan. And to that point, and then you look at a guy like CJ Stroud, who goes to a team that they weren't good, but they've got a guy who seems to be a very capable head coach, liked by his players. It seems like it's a world of difference between those two situations. If you just look at CJ and Bryce, for you too, to go through and not only is it enough that, hey, I'm not getting the results that I expect of myself on the field, but then to have the other guy having so much success. Is that making this even more difficult if you were to trying to get into Bryce Young's head here now that CJ Stroud has been celebrated so much? And not that there's any animosity between the two guys, but just that people are saying CJ's great and Bryce, hey, you might be the biggest bust ever. I see people calling him today on ESPN.
Yeah, people on ESPN are stupid. Every single one of the people on ESPN are stupid if they're saying something like that. I could show up opiated, 325 pounds, and just out of prison, and I'd still whoop everybody's ass at football. That's how good of a football player I was. Same with Bryce Young. Okay. So, ESPN bozos and their bust things, they're idiots. It's hard, it was hard to sit back and watch Peyton have so much success because I'm just like, I know how hard this is. How is he having that much success? Now he didn't as a rookie. So
Right.
my rookie year, we couldn't really, there was no litmus test to kind of, pattern it against one another. CJ significantly is playing much better. And, I'm not going to toot my own horn here, but I had him as the number one guy last year, and all my drafts and everything like that. I just thought
the Panthers should have called you.
Yeah, the Panthers weren't going to call me. Ironically enough, you would think, my guy this year was Michael Penix Jr. And Jaden Daniels. So we'll see how that plays out. I think it's got to be hard, but in no way, shape, or form does CJ Stroud's success affect Bryce Young. They have nothing to do with each other. That's all a comparison done by media, done by fans around expectation. The fact that Bryce Young's playing in the NFL was the expectation for him growing up. Now, he has the highest expectations of anybody. So he's more disappointed than anybody because of this. And I expect him, if he gets another shot somewhere else, I expect him to be successful. I wouldn't be surprised at all if you saw a performance such as Baker Mayfield's or Geno Smith's and what we've seen recently, Sam Darnold here.
Does he have the tools, Ryan? Because you hear people say,
are you kidding me?
Yeah, the arm's not strong.
Oh, no, the arm's so strong. Okay. The arm's so strong. He's so athletic. He can do everything you ask him to do with a football. If he wouldn't have been able to, he wouldn't have had the success he had at Alabama in the SEC, which people compare as close to the NFL as you can get. All right. He has zero confidence right now. No one believes in him, and no one has his back. And I know what that feels like. You don't want to go into the office. You don't want to be around anybody. Football seems so toxic to you because you've always had that. You've always had success, and you've always been the guy that everybody loved to lift up and follow and everything like that. And right now, there's no one in that locker room that seemingly feels that way. And that is a hard place to be as a leader of men when you're 22, 23 years old, when there's guys on that offensive line that are trying to realistically put food on the dinner table for their kids because they're in their 30s and things like that. So it's a very isolating and unique situation. Like no one else, I don't care anybody else out there who's who hasn't been in this position or played in this position has any idea how he feels and and what he's going through.
It feels incredibly lonely, Ryan, just to hear you describe it. I mean, it's
incredibly lonely. Football was everything to me. Football's everything to him. It's been his whole life, and to almost start to resent it, that's a very difficult place. And then you're just never in that rhythm of feeling success or that the fun aspect of things. Like the fun was gone, and then there's just no confidence when he steps behind center there. And when you don't have any confidence in a league like that, it will rip you apart. I hate it when people talk about like, well, he's just not good enough. He sucked and everything. No, they could rip apart a pro defense easily. That's not a problem here. The coaching staff sucked. The ownership is bad. They've laid them just out to dry on this deal. And 2 games in, I mean, the irony in all this, when I got the starting job again in year 2, it took 2 games. And then, on my way into work on Monday, I found out I was benched. So, I mean, it's eerily similar for the young man. Good thing for him, he's incredibly mature. Yeah. I was just an asshole, and he is just going to take this in stride, and he's going to be greater for it. So if anybody wants to make the comparison around bust and stuff, that's absurd. I mean, the amount of yardage I have on everybody else in being a bust because of my behavior, the way I acted out, and all of that. I mean, no one is even close to being in that realm. So anybody who wants to spout off that nonsense, they're idiots, absolute idiots.
I know you got to run, Ryan. Let me get you out of here on this one, because there are so many or few people who have been through such a challenging situation like this. Any consideration in reaching out to him, or you feel like not necessarily your place? And if it wasn't, I mean, is there any sort of general advice you would give to the kid? What it has to be the toughest moments of his life right now?
Of course, I work with a ton of former players. I work a ton with guys that are in the league, and what's really good about it is I meet a lot of these guys in college because I'm either calling games that they're in, or their head coaches have had me come speak to their college program. So yeah, he knows I'm always available to him if I can help in any way. That's I think it's just it's almost taboo. Like, don't call Ryan Leaf because then you'll be Ryan Leaf mentality.
Yeah.
I think it's the most absurd thing. Like, I want to call the person who has been in every possible situation I've been in and come out like, in the most amazing way years later. That's where I want to go. And that's who I go to for advice. I mean,
Right.
all the advice I get are from mentors that were, in my shoes years ago, and they found this peaceful, unchaotic life. And I want that life. So that's how I've gone about my business. So of course, I'm always here for any current or former player, because the NFL is not going to do anything for you. The NFL is just going to spit you out and say, who's next? Make me a star. I don't want that. He's bad for the shield. Let's go with this. That's what they want. They want stars. And if you start to struggle, or if you're going through things, and they're just going to discard you and move on to the next one. And that's their right. They're a private business. They're a money-making propaganda machine that exists out there. And, they don't care if you are successful or not. In fact, they don't care if you live or die, actually, as long as what the product is on the field at the time is the thing that keeps handing the money. So you need to, know who has your back. And I'm going to tell you right now, CJ Stroud has Bryce Young's back. Those two are boys.
Yeah.
And so it wouldn't surprise me one bit if Bryce is reaching out to CJ for some understanding. And sometimes that's difficult to do when someone's having real success. I think Peyton got sick and tired of me reaching out years later, because I just was like, I always asked him the question, like, how'd you do it? How'd you do it? How'd you do it? And he's just probably like sick and tired of Ryan trying to tell me how he did it, but I think it's astonishing. It's the hardest position to play in professional sports. And those who do are exceptional.